Hello and welcome to week 4. Right. So, what have we covered so far, and what's coming up? So, in the first week, we looked at how to do effective job searching, sort of looking at how to think about your career and what you want to get out of your career, and then sort of looking at places and where you would like look for jobs. Week 2, we looked at CV and cover letters. And last week, we looked at preparing for interview part 1, and we mainly focused on sort of the questions you will get in an interview, how do you answer them, and looking at some sort of stock answers that you can use and adapt for your own interviews. And so this is sort of a part 2 from last week as well. So this week, we're looking at preparing to interview part 2. And here we're going to look at some of the do's and don'ts and interview basics. So this is sort of, last week we mainly looked at like the questions in the interview itself, and here we're going to look at sort of everything else around the interview. And then in the next couple of weeks, we're looking at your disability rights, reasonable adjustments in the law, and also sort of do's and don'ts around the workplace, social media management, like LinkedIn profiles, and etc. So cool. So today's session, we're going to be looking at pre-interview, the basics, interview, the basics, some interview do's and don'ts, and then we're going to have a little quick break, and then we're going to have a quick look at body language, and then just finishing off the interview, and that'll be that. So, hello there. My name's Daryl. I have a career in HR, and I am your co-pilot for this evening with Baha. And like I said, this session we're sort of looking at... Oh, hello.
So, this will get cringy.
Oh, hello, Sean. How are you?
Okay. I'm sorry, webcam quality might not be great this week.
No, that's okay. I'm just having a bit of trouble with your audio at the second. Let me just see if I turn my volume down, if that makes it better. Oh, dear. There we go. Hi. Hello, Sean. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello. Don't worry, you're perfectly on time. I was just doing a little recap of what we've done the previous weeks. And you're perfectly on time. I hope you're well. Awesome. So, cracking on. Hello there. Like I said, last week, this is sort of part 2 from what we did last week. Last week was, we looked at mainly, like I said, interview questions and sort of the different questions you'll get asked, whether about personal, who you are, about the culture and the workplace, as well as your work history, volunteering, etc. So it was very focused on like the interview questions themselves. And this week we're going to be looking at more do's and don'ts, basics around interviews, sort of your body language in interviews, and how to really finish off and leave with a good impact when you finish an interview. So before we do crack on, what do you want to get out of today's session? Have a little, is there anything in particular, for example, Sean, is there anything in particular you want to look at today, or are you just sort of looking to see what we cover?
I just would have a look at what's covered and
awesome.
Find out more about preparing for an interview.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So it says before, have you ever had a job interview before? If so, what was more memorable about it? What did you take away from it? And what are your interview do's and don'ts? Is there anything you think you should do in an interview? Or are there things that you think that absolutely should not be done? Awesome. So just keep these things in your mind as we go forward. Right, so pre-interview, the basics. So here, we're looking at so everything before your interview, okay? So you've impressed them with your CV and cover letter, and you've got the all-important interview. What is going to be coming next? So, first of all, do your homework. Before the big day, visit the company's website and review the job description they've sent you. Read up on the skills they're looking for and whether you meet those requirements, and sort of think about any examples you can talk about that demonstrate those skills and behaviours. So I think we've covered this before. Oh, hello. Was that a question?
I can't hear anything.
Yes. Yeah, I think the sound's not too good. Hello. Baha, can you hear us?
I'm probably going to pop off and then rejoin.
Dia, are you still there?
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah, I can hear you as well. I think it might just be Sean.
Hello?
Hello, oh, that's much better. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Hello, can you hear us?
Can you hear the lag?
Yeah.
I can't hear anything here. I'm probably going to retry again.
That's okay. We can wait a few seconds while you redo it. Bye.
If you can hear me.
Hang on, let me send a message. Hang on, I can do this.
Yeah, so it seems we can hear Sean.
Yeah, I can hear him, but there's really bad feedback on his computer. I don't think it's us. I could be wrong though. My audio has been notoriously rubbish.
No, I really don't think it. Yeah, I mean, I can hear you perfectly well. You can hear me perfectly well. We can both hear Sean, so I think it's something on his end. I mean, he did say when he first came on, he sort of I think he said that his audio and visual isn't that, or his webcam isn't that great that he's using today.
God bless him. Yeah, I just thought we'd wait for like a few minutes, let him log on. Cool. Oh, hang on. It's kind of kicking him back into life.
I guess if Sean can't resolve the problem, we might just have to
crack on. Yeah.
Ask him to just to just be patient and let him know that we're recording it, so we can send him the recorded version.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll follow your lead. Let me know if we want to give it 2 more minutes. If not, I'll carry on. I mean, worst comes to worst. If he logs on within 20 seconds, I can always just repeat what I just said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll probably just give it till like past and then like crack on. And then
yeah, wicked. We'll give it okay till past, and then we'll crack on. Crack on. Oh, hello.
Sean?
Hello? I think you can hear us.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear us?
I can hear something.
Can you hear us?
I can. You said, can you hear us? That's what I heard.
Awesome. Can you hear me, Sean?
Can you hear Dee?
And hello?
Hello.
Write a little message.
Oh, okay, I'll let you message.
Oh, he's got it. Alright.
Oh.
What I'll probably do.
Yeah.
Wait. Let's see. He looks like he's online. Sean, are you there?
No. Shall I crack on and then maybe you drop a message? Yeah.
Yeah. If he comes on, because I mean, yeah. Even if it's just it's a shame he can't hear you. Because even if he can't hear you, then at least he could mute his mic, and then you could.
Yeah, it's the not being able to hear me thing that's the issue. I am coming through loud and clear to you, aren't I?
Absolutely. Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll just mute myself and you go on, and then if he comes on, I'll just let him know.
Awesome. Okay.
Okay.
No worries. Okay, so next up we have plan your travel. And basically, this is really obvious, but be amazed at people who just think, oh, I'll just check it about an hour or so before I leave. There's nothing worse than getting lost or missing trains before an interview. Of course, things can happen, are out of your control, and it's important to inform your interviewer if you're going to be late, or but just do the obvious. Plan your travel the night before. Leave plenty of time. If you're worried, leave early. You'll feel way more prepared and composed on arrival. Again, it's one of the real basics, this, but it's really, really important. Best to be early than late. So this is, again, what I was saying. Best if, when you're planning your travel, leave early. Make sure you've got plenty of time. And this is sort of a theme that I'm going to sort of say a lot throughout this interview, throughout this workshop, is your interview doesn't start when you walk into the room and you sit down and then start, answering questions. The interview starts the second you walk into the building. And this is one of those things, if you turn up late or flustered, it's best to actually be early. It makes a good impression on the person that's interviewing you, shows that you can manage your time, and you're punctual. So super important. Again, this is another one that I hope is really obvious, but get a good night's sleep. If you've got a big interview the next day, if you're in bed refreshed super early, you'll wake up, you'll think clearer, you'll feel better. Also, after a good night's sleep, you'll look and feel more refreshed. And again, all of this is so important when you're having an interview, because you want to be on your top game, and you can't be on your top game if you're drowsy, sleepy, feeling a bit rough, and just a bit knackered. So obvious, but good to state. Good night's sleep. Don't stay up all night chatting or playing Halo or whatever. Right, drink lots of water. Again, and this this could be said in the interview section as well, but definitely before an interview. If you're dehydrated and feeling sluggish, again, that's going to impact how you come across. It's going to impact your ability to answer questions, also how you feel, because another part of is a lot of this is psychological as well. So you want to be in the best state mentally, as well as prepared with your knowledge. So you want to be able to put yourself in the best position possible. So a simple thing like a good night's sleep and drinking lots of water will set you up for your interview, and that's really important. So again, when you've got an interview, it's not a on the day I'll think about it thing. It's something you should be thinking out in the leading up by doing your research, as well as preparing yourself, mentally, physically, and make sure that you know everything and you're in as good a position as possible to really sell yourself. So that's pre-interview, the basics. We're now going to look at the interview basics. So don't panic. This is my general advice for everything. It's all going to be okay. It's really easy to work yourself up, but as long as you follow the simple rules, doing your homework, you're going to be okay. So like I said, it's natural to feel nervous before an interview, but don't panic if things don't go according to plan. If a question throws you off track, ask for a moment to think about it and compose yourself. That's okay. If you're really stressed, let your interviewer know. This will help them understand your situation and make you feel a bit at ease. But my general advice is, try and, just make sure you can calm yourself before you get to that point, because again, it's not going to look great if you're sitting there in an interview going, I'm really stressed, I can't cope with this, But if say something's happened, like, oh, my dog's ill or something, so if you're off your game or something, just let your interviewer know. So yeah, just be calm. Like I said, sometimes things don't go to plan, but just take a breath and try to relax yourself as much as you can. So be yourself is really, really important in an interview. Give it, because you want to give an accurate picture of yourself in an interview. Friends and family may have advised you to say like what to say, but it's best actually just to be yourself, because you can, like, if you're being yourself, you can like reveal your personality and make yourself appear much more relaxed. But also, you know, people want to hire you. They, you know, they don't want to hire this fictionalized version of yourself that you think that they want. Actually, you're perfect as you are. Don't worry, just be yourself. Body language. So, I don't know about you, but I have a tendency when I'm feeling slightly under pressure to, in fact, I'm, you know, not even under pressure, just generally, I have a tendency to really move my hands when I'm talking. If I wasn't sharing my screen right now, you'd see exactly what I mean. I use big hand gestures. So even, you know, it's really easy to do these things, whether it's playing with your hair, fiddle with a pen, bite your nails, or anything else. But try not to do this during an interview. Be really aware of your body language. We're going to talk a bit more about body language later. But again, always be aware of your body language, whether it's, like I said, talking with your hands, playing with your hair, slouching, just be aware. Again, we'll go into this a bit more detail later, but keep it in mind. Okay, first impressions really counts. Make sure you, again, I'm going to talk about this a bit more later, but make sure you're wearing something appropriate for the interview that's not too uncomfortable. Your handshake's important. Look your interview in the eye and just make a good first impression. So this is, again, what connecting with what I was saying earlier. An interview doesn't start when you walk into the room and you start answering the first question. Your interview starts the second you meet that person, the second you walk into that building. And it's really important that actually you come across confident, calm, and like reassured. So first impressions make a big difference. Listen and answer the questions. You may have some prepared answers for some questions, for example, like what we looked at last week. However, you don't want to answer a question with a response that doesn't relate to it. So I did mention this last week. You've got to answer the question they're asking, not answer the question you wish they asked. So listen carefully to the interviewer and make sure you answer appropriately, and don't be afraid to ask the interviewer to like elaborate or to repeat themselves if you're unsure. But like I said, be very careful with how you answer a question. I've mentioned this last week as well, but I'm just, you know, again, it's good to just cover. Change your examples up. So if an interviewer wants you to demonstrate your communication skills or teamwork and talents or business ability, don't use the same example for every question. Try to think of various ways to highlight your skills, perhaps by talking about things you do outside of work or school or college. And yeah, just change them up and make sure that, you know, you're demonstrating lots of different examples. It just looks far more well-rounded. Okay, so I'm going to touch on this a bit more later, but come with prepared questions. Asking questions about the role and the company shows that you're interested. For example, how many people are in the team? And, you know, what's the best thing about working here? I'm going to go into this in a bit more detail later, especially when you're finishing up an interview. It's really important to like show that you've done your research, that you're into the company and you're engaged with everything they've said. Okay. This might seem obvious, but I'm gonna state it anyway, because you'll be amazed at how easy it is to slip into, I'm not sure I can say this, but like resting bitch face. We've all been guilty of it sometimes. So basically, you've just got to look interested. You've got to smile. You've got to nod. You've got to show that you're interested in what the interviewer is saying. If you look bored or don't maintain eye contact, your interviewer is going to think that you're not interested in the job, you're not interested in the company, that you're not taking it seriously. This might seem really obvious, but honestly, people can become so unaware of their body language or how they're coming across. And it's a real shame, because like if I'm interviewing someone that's like playing with their nails, not looking at me, staring at the floor, I'm going to think, well, if you're not interested, if I can't get your attention for 5 minutes, why would I hire you? And last but not least, end on a positive. So, you know, at the end of the interview, you need to end on a, right, thank you for your time. I've really enjoyed meeting you. It just leaves a very positive impression with the person that's interviewed you. It will keep them in your mind, and it's just the best way to go around it. It looks professional, end on a positive, or keep them in your mind, you in their mind. And yeah, that's that. So now we've covered the basics, we're going to go into some do's and don'ts. So what, before I crack on, have a little think if you're watching this at home. What do you think the big do's and don'ts are? And let's see if any of yours appear on my list. Maybe you've got some that, I've missed out that you think that you should do in an interview. So first of all, feel free, do ask your interviewer how long you think the interview is going to be, how it's expected, because it's good to be able to plan out your day. And again, it's one of those good things that shows that you're engaged, you're paying attention. So you can do this before the interview, or just before you start in. I mean, I suggest you do it before. Just when you're setting up an interview, just say hi, just so I'm aware, how long is this interview? Who am I going to be interviewing with? Also, is really important to ask. Again, so you can just prepare yourself if you know who you're meeting with, if it's just HR or if it's a manager. And also, like I said, you can prepare for how it's going to impact your day. If you turn up and they say, oh, hi, well, it's actually it's a half day in a meeting, you're having 12 interviews, it's, if that's what it's going to be, you need to know. So you obviously can plan your day around it, but also prepare yourself for, rigorous interviewing. But if it's like a 45-minute interview, again, it's good to know because you're going to know what sort of questions they're going to be asking. Bring notes along to calm your nerves. If you are feeling nervous, and everyone doesn't matter how senior or junior you are, people get nervous before interviews. They are very nerve-wracking things. I still do this to this day. I will always have a copy of my CV with me. I'll have a copy of the job description, and I always scribble notes, anecdotes, which examples to use here, and actually this is really relevant for this. So if it helps, if that will calm your nerves, absolutely bring notes. So when you're, before your interview, you can just quickly read over them and just, reassure yourself that you know that your information. Okay, this, again, you think is obvious, but you'll be amazed at the people that do it. Turn off or mute your phone and put it out of sight. So this goes, and this is what I'm about to say is really important because it's something that I've seen people do before interviews, and it's one of my pet hates, if I'm completely honest. People who think, like I said, an interview starts from the second you walk into that building. When you're waiting in reception, you will make an impression. For example, if I come to collect you from reception to take you for an interview, and you're just sitting there slouched playing on your phone, I don't think you're professional. And I think it's really important, it's really important that you make a good first impression. So what I would do is I would put your phone on mute and silent the minute you're walking into a building. When you're waiting to be collected from an interview, do not play on your phone. Doesn't matter if you're bored. You can wait 5 minutes to just sit there and, look interested or look over your handwritten notes. But don't be playing on your phone because you might be doing something really professional. You might be checking emails and checking in, but you could also be playing, like looking at Facebook, going on Twitter. Like, it's not worth the risk. Just put your phone out of sight the second you're in that building. And again, I don't like the horror stories of people who have not only left their mobile phones on during an interview, but even worse, have answered them. It's an absolute big, big, big no. So to save you from temptation, just turn your phone off, turn it right off. Again, so we've sort of covered this, but I can't emphasize it enough, is show enthusiasm for the position and the company at all times. When you're in that interview, you smile, you nod, you show you're engaged. Do not slip into it's easy to zone out. Don't, stay focused. Show that you're interested, smile, keep eye contact, super, super important. If they tell you something, if they mention something about the company, ask questions about it, show that you're interested, show that you're paying attention. Last but not least, close the interview by telling the interviewer or interviewers that you're really interested in the job. So this is what I was mentioning going into a bit more detail what I just mentioned on the last slide about ending on a positive. And what we're going to look at a bit more detail later is at the end of an interview, they'll mention, do you have any questions? And this is a great opportunity to, again, end the interview on a high, show that you've done your research, and show that you're interested. Again, we will look at that in more depth later, but just to give you an idea of what that means. Okay, big old don'ts coming up. So, don't dress casually. Again, I hope this is an obvious one, but, don't turn up in trainers. Don't turn up in T-shirts. Always dress as smart as, in a business suit. Even if they say dress smart casual, always on the side of smart rather than casual, because even if, it's better, no one's going to judge you for being dressed too smart, whereas if you have dressed too casually, people will remember that and be like, oh, they weren't dressed very professionally. So when in doubt, always err on the side of caution and dress in business smarts, blazer, suit, etc. Don't turn up to your interview in, a polka dot skirt and, a Marvel t-shirt. Okay, next up is don't violate the interviewer's personal space. Don't lean forward, don't get too close, sit back in your seat, keep your distance. Again, you don't want to be in their faces. It doesn't leave a good impression.
So if somebody offers you a job, you can't hug them.
I'm afraid not, my friend. Hugging is reserved for friends and family only. Though personally, I would love a hug after an interview, but no, it's probably best not to. Don't mistreat the support staff. What I mean, so here's a horror story. I had someone, they were offered tea and coffee by someone when they were waiting for an interview, and they were quite rude. They dismissed them, said, no, I don't want coffee. Quite rude. About 10 minutes later, they're come and collected, taken to their interview. And as they come into the room and they sit down, they're opposite the person that they were rude to. So no matter who you're talking to, it doesn't matter whether it's a receptionist or an intern or whoever, always be polite, because you never know, that person might be on the interview panel. Also, it's just common sense, just be polite to people. But if that isn't common sense to you, be careful who you're being rude to, because you never know, they might be the ones interviewing you and they're not going to look at you with a positive attitude if you've just been rude to them. Don't stand out for the wrong reasons. This could be wearing a flamboyant hat, or you may have, wore too much perfume, or you might have a bit too much of it. Makeup is fine, of course, but if you're wearing, bright purple lipstick and, fluorescent pink eyeshadow, it might be a bit too much. My advice is for interviews, go for a very neutral color palette. Tone down any, if your favorite perfume, just, tone it down maybe. Don't have to wear 1,200 bracelets, tone down the accessories. Just don't make sure that you're just not standing out for the wrong reasons. Again, hopefully this is really obvious, but just in case it isn't, don't use poor grammar, bad language, slang, or pause words such as like and Now, I know that I'm guilty of using and all the time. So just try to be aware of it in an interview. Try not to use those, because, you can sound silly. Don't wing it. So this is, again, an obvious one, but I've put it in there just in case it isn't. Like I said, I've, emphasized research, preparing yourself, make sure good night's sleep, etc., etc. Don't go, oh, I've got an interview like next week. Oh, I'll just wing it, see what it's like when I turn up. Don't do that. Always prepare. No matter, even if you think, oh, I'll never get the interview, or, oh, it's beneath me, like, it just sets up a bad impression. It makes you look bad if you're not prepared. It makes you look like you don't know what you're talking about if you can't answer a simple question. So don't ever just think, oh, I'll wing that interview. Always prepare yourself. Do not eat, drink, or chew gum during the interview. And again, I think you guys are probably all underage, but just on the off chance, don't drink alcohol before an interview, and don't smoke. I hope none of you are smokers, but if you are, don't do it, because you'll end up smelling of smoke, and it's not a good impression. For drinking, before the interview, maybe when they offer you like a beverage, always go for just a glass of water, and it's just there that for you to sip. It's not for you to like gulp down. I would sip it during interviews. For if you're talking a lot, for example, right now I've got a water next to me, because if my mouth starts to get dry, just have a little sip to refresh myself. But you don't want to gulp it during an interview. It's just to keep yourself fresh, your mouth watered, so you can carry on talking. Okay. Do not act desperate as though you would take any job with any employer. Nothing looks as bad as I'll work anywhere. I'll do anything you ask. What? I don't mind, whatever. You want to, again, like, I've got my options open. I've got a few interviews, it doesn't give a good impression if you're just like, yeah, I'll do anything, whenever, with anyone. Don't say anything negative about former colleagues, supervisors, employers, and don't offer any negative information about yourself, even if you're being self-deprecating. I've mentioned this before, and so when answering interview questions last week, but always stick to the positive. We've all got negative experiences, but you can spin them to make them positive. If you've left a company because you didn't get on with your manager, you don't say, oh, well, my previous manager was really, really horrible, so I left. You can say something along the lines of, I've changed, I'm looking for a new job, or I've changed new companies because I wanted to expand my horizons and get some experience in a different, different company. Again, you don't go negative. It makes you look bad. You can look really petty. Also, the person that's interviewing you, you don't know who they know. If they've got your CV in front of you. If you go, oh, I don't like Dave from finance from my last company, that person might be married to Dave from finance in your old company. You don't know. Don't risk it. Don't go negative. And that includes going negative about yourself. People, again, I've got a very, how can I put this? A very different sense of humour. And some people, find you being self-deprecating. That might be their type of humour, or they might just be that way inclined. But this can just look like you're being quite negative in an interview. And, again, you don't know, like, the person's interviewing you, they might not get your sense of humour, or they might not get if you're joking, or they might just hear that and think, oh, well, that person's being really negative. Or they might hear and think, oh, well, if that person doesn't think they're very good at this, then clearly they're not very good at it. When, you might be sarcastic or whatever, it's not worth it. Just leave that at the front door, as they say. So don't go negative at any cost. It's just not worth it. Don't answer questions. Again, this is something I have said before, but just to recap, don't answer questions with a simple yes or no. Explain whenever possible. Describe those things about yourself that showcase your talents, your skills, your determination. Give detailed examples of your accomplishments. Again, yes or no answers. They don't really tell the interviewer anything. You've got to take every opportunity to show off why you're the best, why actually I've been really good at this, or this is where I excel at this. Okay, last but not least, don't respond to an unexpected question with an extended pause, or by saying something like, boy, that's a good question. A short pause before responding is okay. Ask for clarification if you don't understand the question or want a bit of guidance on what's an appropriate response. But again, don't leave big pauses. Just be like, oh, I'm just going to take a few seconds to answer that, or or I'm just going to pause while I collect my thoughts, or whatever. Don't just sit there staring at them while you think of an answer. And, don't say something like, boy, that's a hard question. Cool. So we're now going to be looking at body language. So what sort of body language do you think is really important, Sean, when it comes to having an interview?
You have to act like you're interested, and you have to sort of focus on the interviewer, because you want to look like you're somebody who's actually interested in the job and who actually wants the job and who'd actually be a good candidate for the job.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. Awesome. So, do walk in confidently. It's important you look as professional as possible from the outset. As soon as you walk into the building, you'll begin to be judged on your behaviour. This is what I've been saying. The interview doesn't start when you start answering questions. It starts the second you walk into the building. There are even instances where recruiters watch from their offices as candidates arrive to see how their body language changes. So you've just got to be switched on from the second you walk into a building. Like you said, deliver a firm handshake. I once got, I had to spend 10 minutes practicing my handshake because a recruiter I was working with thought that my handshake was too flimsy. So it's really important that you have a strong handshake. If it's too weak, you'll seem submissive, but if you come on too strong, you can go too far with your handshake. It can be too firm, and you can see that you're trying to, like, if you do that, it looks like you're trying too hard. So keep it firm, but try not to crush their hand. Also, just for, you know, again, an obvious point, but to avoid any awkward situations, don't forget to actually let go. Don't do a Donald Trump where he shakes hands for 14 minutes with someone. You know, you want a quick handshake, should I say. Just a general comment for, you know, if you ever have to go anywhere, especially if you're on the tube, you know, always carry hand sanitizer with you and make sure you get all those nasty germs off. Cool. Next up, we have sit up straight. So you want avoid being too stiff, but try to sit up straight, keeping like the small of your back against the chair. Keep your legs as straight and as still as you can. It's okay to like lean forward slightly, but remember, don't lean too far forward because then you look a little bit creepy. It just shows that you're listening, but again, like I said, just don't overdo it. Keep eye contact. Super important. So maintaining eye contact shows the interviewer that you're not intimidated, that you're taking everything in. If you feel uncomfortable, you can look away for a few seconds or try looking at their nose. Again, around 10 seconds of good eye contact at a time is a good guideline because you can come across, again, as a bit creepy if you're just staring constantly without blinking. So, again, just mix it up. Again, that's all a bit of common sense. If you're unsure, about 10 seconds of good eye contact is my general guideline. Okay, again, I hope this is, again, it might be a bit of an obvious one, but it's a good one to list. Smile, okay? Like a recruiting like manager aren't going to want to employ miserable people. It's okay to be a bit nervous, but just put a smile can make it go, like a smile can cover up a lot. It can go a long way. If you smile, you look more relaxed, you look more comfortable, you look more personable, and you know, just to put it simply, you look more likable when you smile. If you're on a bus and there's 2 seats available, one's next to someone smiling, you know, seems quite friendly, or you can sit next to someone who's scowling and looks miserable. You're gonna want to sit next to the person smiling who looks friendly, because you know what? That's, you know, they come across as friendly and that's important. Whereas scowling, miserable people, who wants to be near them? So I've said this before, but again, really important, watch your hands. Most people, like I said, myself included, have trouble with this. It's fine to be animated and gesticulate with your hands to make a point, but don't go overboard. Keep your arms uncrossed, so don't cross them. That doesn't make a good impression if you sit there with your arms folded. You can look grumpy. But put your hands and keep your hands away from your face as well. Like if you're like touching your nose or your ear, you know, that can, if you look fidgety, it's not a good look. A good tip is to ask if you can take notes. So if you know that you move your hands a lot, maybe ask if you can take notes in an interview. Take a little notepad with you, and then you can write down with your pen, and sort of just keep your hands busy. And it's great because it also looks like you're paying attention, and you know, really, you know, paying attention to everything they're saying, and you look really keen. So that's a little good tip. All right, so we've covered some body language do's. We're now going to look at some body language don'ts. So this might seem a bit conflicting, but don't be overconfident. Arrogance is not a good look. Walking into an interview thinking that you've already got the job can be a bit detrimental. Remember, arrogance and confidence are not the same thing. Don't offer a weak handshake. As we sort of said before, a weak handshake looks like you lack confidence, and it can be quite awkward. Try to mirror your interviewer's handshake and apply the same amount of pressure. But yeah, just generally keep it firm. Don't be weak, because again, it looks really bad. Do not slouch. Bad posture can make you look bored and uninterested. This goes, like I said, this all goes for crossing your arms and your legs. Or you might be cold, but you know, it just looks negative. Like, doesn't matter what if you're sitting there with your arms crossed, your legs crossed, you look bored, you don't look like you're paying attention, and it doesn't look professional, which is all the things we want to avoid. Don't stare. So again, there's maintaining eye contact, but there's definitely a limit to this. You don't want to be that intense person that came in for an interview and just stared at the interviewer for like 20 minutes. So just like I said, remember to blink. You want to look attentive, not frightening. So we mentioned at the end of our last do one is that, you know, if you play with your hands a lot, bring a pen or something, but be careful because don't play with the pen, don't play with your hair. Really think about this. It seems really obvious, but like with most body language, you're often not aware that you're doing it. Be aware of any bad habits you had before your interview and keep them in the back of your mind. And if you're not aware of any, ask a good friend or a family member to be like, well, actually, you talk with your hands a lot, or actually, you have a real bad habit of playing with your hair. And just, you know, don't take it personally. We all do it. So, for example, I play with my hair all the time. I'm often having the mickey taken out of me because I will how I sit and play with my hair and talk with my hands. So whenever I go for an interview, I know never to wear my hair down. I know that I have to tie it back, make sure there's no loose strands, it's out of my face and out of the way. Otherwise, so the temptation isn't even there to play with my hair. And again, I try to become very aware of my hands when I'm in an interview. So I'll often sit with them in my lap, clasped. So not crossed, but just in my lap, just sort of hand one over another, to try to remind myself not to move them. Last but not least, in the don't category, we have fidget. So to avoid moving around too much or nervously moving your feet or, you know, change or fidgeting and change position, it's going to make you look awkward and uncomfortable. So just be really aware of it. Again, you don't want to look wooden, you don't want to be immobile, you know, you don't want to go from one extreme to the other, but fidgeting makes you look bored, restless, unconfident, so try to avoid it. Just with all these things, be really, really aware of what your body's doing, and that you're not looking or playing up to any bad habits, basically. Okay, so congratulations, you've had your interview, and how do you finish it? Now, I find the best way to finish an interview is to ask questions. It shows, you can show off that you've done research, you can ask anything about the company. This is basically the end of the interview. You'll get asked, is there anything you would like to ask? And this is your chance to shine. So at the end of it, I've mentioned this before, so at the end of the interview, it's your opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. And to remember, and like I said, so this is your opportunity to end on that positive, to show off that you've done your research, also, but personally, to find out a bit more about the role, make sure that it's right for you, ask about your team or anything like that. But what I will say is don't ask about salary or benefits just yet. If you've just had like your first interview, your second interview, like also any interview, any stage, I'd say, I'd wait until you're in the final steps of the interview process, because if you ask a bit too early, it can look a bit too, it's not the right etiquette. There are other questions, and we're going to look at some examples that you can ask that make a much better impression. Salary and benefits is something that should come later in the stage that you can negotiate and talk about with HR or the hiring manager. So, finishing an interview. What we're now going to look at is some of the questions. These are just examples. You could ask anything, but when I go to an interview, I always have one or two at the back of my mind that I can ask, just so it shows that I'm keen. It ends on a positive, shows that you're interested in the company and the role. So we're going to look at a couple of examples here and sort of, what's good about each question. So the first one, and before I do actually, is there any questions that you would think about asking maybe at the end of an interview? No? Okay, cool. So first question, can you tell me more about the day-to-day responsibilities of this job? So this is your chance to learn as much as possible about the role so you can decide whether it's a job you really want. By learning more about the day-to-day tasks, you will also gain some insight into what specific skills and strengths are needed, and you can address any topics that haven't already been covered. So this is a really, really good one.
Ask about like what your fellow employees would be like, or what are their backgrounds, or what's your background, Mr. Interviewer, if like they work in the office with you, or
yeah, absolutely. You could ask sort of generally, what's the background of the different people in this office? Where do they, whether it's work history or etc. I think that's a really valid question. It's good to know sort of if everyone's the same, or if actually there's a nice variety in an office. I think that's really good. You can get some really good insight from that question. Absolutely. Next up, I've got, what do you think are the most important qualities for someone to excel in this role? So this question can often lead to valuable information that's not in the job description. It can help you learn about what the company culture is like and what expectations there are. And basically, it's a good example for you to be like, to show that you're a good fit for the role. What are your expectations for this role during the first 30 days, 60 days, or a year? So this is a good question to ask again, because you can find out about your employer's expectations for like the person in this position. And it's really good to sort of get a forward plan, see sort of strategically what you'll be doing if you get the role in the first year of that job. So this sort of fits in with what you were saying, Sean. You can sort of finding out about the culture of the company. So describe the culture of the company. This is a good chance for you to find out if you're a good fit for this particular organisation. It's to make sure that you're comfortable with the culture and the dynamic of the company. This is a really telling question because, often you'll get this, this is fantastic, we do this and that, but there are some telling signs when someone answers this question. So here, for example, they might say, oh, well, we do have a work-late culture in this company, and, work-life balance is slightly, off kilter, things like that, if that's what's important to you, it's a good way to, like I said, these are the questions that won't be in the job description that you can't, get out of a list of responsibilities. It's the sort of stuff that's really important to make sure that you're happy long-term in a job. Where do you think the company's headed in the next 5 years? So again, this is really useful if you plan to be in a role for several years. If you're going into a company and you're like, right, this is where I want to, if you want to make your 5-year plan about where you can progress in a company. And this is just, again, it's good to make sure that the company's growing so you can grow with it, basically. Because, if you want to be somewhere along, it's a good way to actually also suss out if maybe you're just with this company and then you move on in 2 to 3 years, or actually what their strategy is, where they're going. And like I said, if you can grow the company, then brilliant. Okay, so who do you consider your top competitor and why? You should already have an idea of the company's major competitors, but it can be useful to ask the interviewer for their thoughts. It'll also be really good because they'll be able to give you insights that you can't find anywhere else, which again, if you go on to the next stage of interviews or whatever, really valuable insight. What are the biggest opportunities facing a company/department right now? On the flip side, you may want to ask about challenges. This question can help you uncover trends or issues in industry and perhaps identify areas where your skills could save the day. So, for example, if it's we're facing a marketing challenge to get, young people to volunteer more for charity sectors. You could be like, oh well, actually, it's funny you should mention that. But my skills in my last job, I got X number of young adults to volunteer their time, and I built up a database and blah blah blah. So that again, it's a good example for you to show off and actually say, well, actually, if this is your biggest challenge, or this is the biggest opportunity coming up, this is how I can help you and why you should hire me. Again, challenges. So this is what I just mentioned. That's just the flip side of that 4 questions. So you can ask about biggest opportunities, or you can ask about biggest challenges. What do you like best about working for this company? This is something when I've interviewed people that has always thrown me, because sometimes on the spot you can be like, oh gosh, what do I like? But this will be a really telling answer, because also you can get a personal experience as well as an insight to the company's culture, and also sort of see, like, maybe if they're saying, oh, day to day, this is what my job entails and this is what I find interesting. So again, it's that nice personal touch as well. So that's always a good one to have up your sleeve. What is the typical career path for someone in this role? This question can help you learn whether the company promotes from within, how career advancement works within a company. By asking this question, you can show your interest in growing with the company as well. So just be careful not to phrase in a way that sounds too self-serving, like, when can I expect a raise and promotion? You don't come across well with that. But maybe, like I said, by phrasing it slightly differently, like, what is the typical career path for someone in this role, makes a big difference. How do I compare with the other candidates you've interviewed for this role? This is a slightly risky choice, though I know a few people that use it, and good for them, because like you said, it takes I think it takes a lot of confidence and a lot of guts to ask this at the end of an interview. I know I would never have the guts to ask it. But yeah, so you don't want to put the interviewer in an awkward position. However, if things are going well and you've built up a strong rapport, this question can help you see if there's any concerns or any issues that you could address to show why you're the best person for the job. So yeah, if you've got the confidence, and like I said, you've got that good rapport with the interviewer, ask it, absolutely. Because if they say, oh well, I'm a bit concerned you don't have as much experience, like X experience as other people, you can be like, actually, well, I have all this experience, and let me tell you how actually I do have this and exactly what you need. So last one now. What are the next steps in the interview process? This question shows that you're eager to move forward in the process. It also helps you gain important information about the timeline for hiring, so you can follow up at an appropriate time. And so it's all about ending on that positive. So just to do a little recap, these questions are designed to make sure that you leave on that positive. This is another opportunity to show them how you can help the organisation and to address any other additional questions that might come up. It's also a great opportunity for you to show that you've researched your company and that you're interested in, like, the culture, all the additional stuff, rather than just what's been said on the job description. And again, this is your opportunity to end on a high, leave with a positive note, firm handshake. Thank you for your time. Thank you for answering my questions. I look forward to hearing from you soon. So that is it for this week's session. So just to go over what we've covered, as this was a two-parter. Last week we looked at very specific, interview questions only, how to answer them, what a competency-based question was, how to answer those. And this week we've looked at very much everything else around the interview process. So we've looked at the pre-interview process, where do your research, get a good night's sleep, drink lots of water, make sure you prepare and plan your route. Then we've looked at the interview, the basics of what you got to do, and like the do's and don'ts. And then we've looked at body language. Be aware of your hands. Be aware that you're smiling and making eye contact. And then lastly, what we've just looked at is the interview questions. And just like I said, have one or two up your sleeve that you can ask. It shows that you're keen, it shows that you're interested, and it helps you end that interview on that high that we've talked about. So Sean, what have you found interesting out of today's session? What is there one piece of advice or anything that you're going to take with you and use going forward?
Well, I've been able to see what things I should and should not do in an interview. I have an idea now what I should do, and like the STAR method from last week, and combining them all together gives us an idea on what is the best way.
Amazing. Do you have any questions for me around interviews? Do you have any questions that I've not answered that I can answer now?
No, not
Amazing.
really.
Amazing. Okay, in which case I look forward to seeing you next week, where we're going to look at your rights in the workplace, reasonable adjustment, and some interesting things. As always, if you've got any questions, ask Baha or Holly. They can always pass them on to me. If there's anything you want to ask Arad. And until next week, I hope you have a lovely, lovely week. And I look forward to seeing you next week.